Hello to all my people, and if you're watching live, checking us out on YouTube, or listening on your favorite podcast provider, you are most definitely my people. Welcome to another episode of Botched, and Share Shots. I'm your host, a chef by trade and a mark by choice. I am the Will Gray, and joining me tonight is a wrestler, a promoter. He is the Mastodon, the Tater City Madman. He is Uncle Masty. Masty, thanks for coming on, chat about some wrestling, man. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty good. Just got home from work, ready to just kick back, relax, enjoy Rockstar Zero, and see where the night goes.
It kind of sounds like we're both at the kind of tail end of our days. This is kind of it. Once we finish here, it's just kind of nothing but relaxing for the rest of the night.
Well,
So I was saying, man, I always start these things the same way. It's always kind of the same icebreaker. What did you watch growing up? What were you exposed to? What kind of wrestling did you see when you were a kid?
when I was a kid, I wasn't allowed to watch wrestling.
Oh,
I
okay.
was 100% that kid that would see stuff on TV and was like, I want to do that. In fact, I wasn't allowed to watch the Ninja Turtles because my parents thought that, the young strapping hoss that I was, that I'd lift a septic tank cover off and try to hang out in there.
Oh yeah, big time Ninja Turtles.
So I was actually more into like comic books, and I guess they figured I wouldn't try to fly. Um, so I was more into comic books and Star Wars. It wasn't until I got a little bit older. Now, like I would sneak. I had an older brother, so like we would sneak watch it once in a while. Like I really liked Tatanka. I really liked Owen Hart. Because I was a younger brother, my brother was an older brother. They were doing the that thing at that time. Um, but yeah, like when I turned like 14, 15, my parents stopped, really paying attention to what I was doing. So I weaseled my way back into wrestling, and I started watching Nitro. I was 100% WCW Nitro. Um, that was my stuff.
Nice. I grew up in that late '80s, early '90s. I was a WCW kid too, like Turner Broadcasting, that Southeast kind of shoved down our throats. So Star Wars comic books. I'm gonna ask, what did you think about looking at the series as three separate trilogies? The originals, four, five, and six, and then we got one, two, and three, then seven, eight, and nine. Okay, it's all out of order. It's all whacked. A lot of people
Right.
say like the Phantom Menace and that trilogy versus the last trilogy is the weakest of the three. How would you rank the trilogies? The original trilogy, then the prequel, then seven, eight, and nine with like the return of the rise of Skywalker and all of that.
That is such a multi-layered. I think my computer just glitched there for a second.
It did. You're
What
good. You're
was it?
back.
We're good.
Yeah, yeah.
That is such a multi-layered question. We could easily burn all 30 minutes and then some
Just talking about
talking
Star
just
Wars.
about Star Wars and my feelings on Star Wars. Absolutely, absolutely. I listen 10 out of 10 times. I'd rather talk about that than indie wrestling any day. And I love indie wrestling. I just love Star Wars that much more. Um, I do agree to an extent that there are three separate stories being told. Absolutely. You got three different groups of characters. So easily there's three different stories being told. But realistically, the sum of the nine movies is the Skywalker saga, and Star Wars is so much more than that. So it's funny that like everyone's hyper fixated on this one tiny little drop in the bucket that is Star Wars. Um, I always I always got just drawn in by the side characters and the side stories. I was a novel reader when I was growing up. Typical ADHD kid that could read books as a kid now, and now it's like I look at a book and I'm like, um, yeah, like all the non-Jedi stuff and the non-Skywalker stuff really spoke to me. But as far as my favorite, and this is gonna sound weird, but the prequel trilogy right now that I'm older, like when it first came out, I hated the Phantom Menace. I was like, this thing is a steaming pile of shit. And and poor Hayden Christensen made the best out of what he could with the dialogue he was given for the next two movies. But I mean, now that I'm older and looking back, and like this will tie into booking and promoting, but um looking at how the story was structured and the character that he was portraying, it actually made a lot of sense. Hayden Christensen actually nailed the job of Anakin Skywalker. If you look at it outside of like I'm a kid and I want to be entertained, like to really enjoy the nuance of the storytelling, he did a great job. So that would totally be my favorite. Um, and then of course the original trilogy, four, five, and six. I was born in '83. It's the year Return of the Jedi came out. one of my favorite films of all time, with one of the best trilogies ever made, especially for the advancement of science of special effects that they had available. So that's the other weird thing. Like you're out of order with the visual elements, and my dog's running around. He's probably knocking shit over. So it's like I appreciate what they were able to do with each time period and each production quality. Um, this most recent one, and I don't have strong opinions on it. I didn't hate it, but I also didn't love it. Like it is what it is. It's a story that was told. Um, if you look at it out of context of the rest of the rest of the films, it was a fun story that was told. It wasn't what I wanted, but it's let's get realistic here. Hollywood doesn't cater to just me. It's got to cater to a whole generation of kids that have to buy toys and grow up and drag their kids to more Star Wars movies. So I understand. I get it. I love the Disney Plus series though. Let me tell you, the Disney Plus series that they've been rolling out, that's everything I've wanted. That's everything I've always wanted with Star Wars, and they've nailed it. I think that doing 2 to 3 hour long movies is a disservice to telling a story. I mean, we've got more hours of footage of the Mandalorian story in 2 years than we have in the entire Skywalker saga combined. So, you really want to start breaking out how complicated and complex these stories are. The whole thing's going to change, and I love it, and I'm here for it.
So let me ask you a question
Sorry,
then. No,
Randall.
I'm here for it. I say in a time frame a basic idea of what we're working with. If the conversation lasts as long as we want it to, it lasts as long as we want it to. Really, that's more up to
Oh, yeah.
you. That's definitely up to you. My question
Listen,
is,
no one's ever accused me of not being able to talk and fill time. So, you hand me a microphone and God bless you.
oh, then we're good. We're gonna fill this no problem. Then I do one more Star Wars question before we get to the business, but I gotta know how come we didn't get more pod racing then? Because that was such a banger portion of a Phantom Menace, but they never brought it back into the story. I know it's there in the canon periodically, like it comes up in some of the books and some of the other stuff they've done. Why didn't they fucking give us any more pod racing than just one movie's worth, and even like one scene in one movie's worth?
They seriously could do. And now this is the great thing about the streaming with the series is if someone was like, hey, we should really develop a series about pod racing and what life is as a pod racer, like basically take Days of Thunder but make it Star Wars, I'd watch that shit. You could throw it up on Disney Plus. They're gonna get my money every year.
Fuck yes.
I'm not even gonna think twice about it. They now can do stuff like that. It's like pro wrestling now having, the ability to put your entire shows up on YouTube. Hey, you can go film a studio show and have no fans. We're in PA, you gotta have a commission to have a live audience. So you can go run a couple shows worth of just filler matches and then actually put together TV shows and put them up on YouTube without needing distribution whatsoever. So it's the whole game's changed, not just for Hollywood, but for pro wrestling as well. And you've got to adapt. You just have to adapt. You've got the ability to do shit you've never. Sorry, can I swear?
I've got the E for a reason, Bubba. You can say whatever you need to.
So yeah, you don't have to worry about any of that shit. You just make the art that you want to make, put it out there, and now you have a global audience of people that'll find it. The people that want to enjoy your shit will find it, and you will find them, and just keep doing it.
All right.
Anyway,
So
and
that's the perfect way to segue because you're talking about where wrestling is now. But let's start at the beginning for you as a person. Like, let's talk about how you decided, like, your training regimen. You decided on a school, you were like, okay, I'm going to be a pro wrestler. What was that process like for you back then when you decided, okay, this is it?
so about 100 years ago, when people still use .coms and AOL keywords,
We're
I
about the
was in
same
high
age, man.
school.
Don't make it
Yeah.
sound that bad.
Um, I was in high school using the school's computers, and I was like, I decided I wanted to be a wrestler. I just didn't know how to go about doing it, and I just had started going to some indie shows, at the local rate, like the local drag strip or the local VFW. Just kind of bumming around looking for places, trying to figure things out. And I just happened to live 30 minutes away from the Wild Samoan Pro Wrestling Training Center in Hazleton. And in the late 90s, if you're in the Northeast, that's you go there, you go to the Monster Factory, or you go to Johnny Rod's, and that's it. Anybody else was just, fly by night. So I kind of lucked in by just geographically being this close to the Wild Samoans. And then I started going to their shows and I got to know them, the family very well. And they were always very good to me. So it was a no-brainer. They kept me on a short leash. They knew what they had when I was like 16 years old and over 6 foot and like 300 pounds and built like a linebacker or built like a lineman, really. They knew they had something that maybe they could get something decent out of, and on top of that, I started doing web design and ringside photography and learning the promoting end of the business, so I had a couple of years of just learning the business before I even stepped foot in the ring to learn the bumps.
So speaking on the Wild Samoans, man, that's a dynasty right there. The whole family from top to bottom. A lot of guys talk about like the wrestling family trees that they come from. In the chef world, it was like, who did you work for? Who did you stage with? That was my previous life. And I've realized in wrestling, there's a parallel to that. You find out where these guys trained with and who they trained with, and you become part of that family tree. Yours is a hell of a family tree, man. The Wild Samoans and the Anoa'i family in general is like, we see it every Monday, Wednesday, Friday nights. You know what I mean? They're all over the place. Can you speak a little bit onto that? Like what it was like just to be able to be a sponge with such like historic names?
Um, I was totally way too young to be in any of the places that I was, and I was way too out of my league to be around some of the conversations that were happening. And a lot of the things that I was learning, I didn't even realize I was learning until years down the line. And I'm like, oh shit, I learned that. Pops, Alpha, Pops was always really good to me. Sam, Alpha Jr., like that was the nucleus of the family that I had found myself attached to. Lloyd, they were always very, very good to me. They treated me very well, and I will say though that that family has a reputation for you put the work in. It's the best bump school in the country, and I'll still stand by that to this day. If you can get a Samoan to teach you how to bump, you're set.
You're
You're
doing it
set 'cause
right then, right?
you're going to do it 1,000 times and 1,000 times and 1,000 times over before you even move on to the next thing. They were very adamant about everybody having the basics down pat, and you'd get beat. It would get you would just get beat up. Not by anybody, but physically, it was exhausting. It was a lot of work, and they made sure that you know how any school is. They've got the people that own the school that teach you once you have your basics, but then they have some of their former students that teach you underneath. And those guys that they held fast. They got beat, so everybody else got beat. Generational trauma, I guess. Um, but the education you pull out of there, the connections. You can go to Joe Blow's wrestling school down the street and get trained by some guy that no one's ever heard of, or you can go get trained by someone that's in the WWE Hall of Fame.
The fucking Wild Samoans.
Yeah,
Like
fucking head shrinkers, the Wild Samoans,
yeah.
people that have been there, done that, and provide an element of not just like physically, this is how you do this, but mentally, this is how you do this. How to protect yourself both in the ring and in the business. Um, the full education, and you can't get that from just anybody. Yeah, you can learn how to do the moves. You can learn how to run through the spots. You can learn how to do all the cool little fancy flashy bullshits. But to really operate in a world that makes this a business, you have to learn from people that have made money doing it. And I think that's the big difference between some wrestling schools and others. And I'm not even going to be the one to draw the line in the sand and say who's worth it and who's not, because who the fuck am I? But I know at the end of the day that my pro wrestling training was valid, legit, worthwhile, worth every penny of investment. And PA has not had a Wild Samoan campus in a couple of years, and who knows? Hopefully, we get to change that. I saw Alpha Junior's been training some folks out in Broadheadsville. That's fantastic. One of their former trainers has his own place in Hazleton, and that's fantastic. So, like, the thumbprint is there. Northeastern PA it's hard to find a wrestler that doesn't have some sort of influence from the Ottawattu family, and that's a good thing.
Without a doubt. And once again, it goes to those. It's a consistency thing, man. When you talk about consistency in the business, families that have been able to do it for 30, 40, 50 years, they're always at the top of that list. Them and the Harts and the Funks, the Ortons, like there's only a handful of names that have been around 30, 40, 50 years, and they're one of them. Looking at the way you were brought up, and you just said it yourself, man. One of my questions was going to be I've always heard the phrase, if you want to make money wrestling, then learn how to wrestle from somebody who made money doing it. You know what I mean? And you pretty much answered that question. So, looking at it into breaking into the business, being brought up under, Afansica, the head shrinkers, they came up in a very different time in the territories than where wrestling's at right now in 2023. It was very different just 20 years ago, even more so, even into the 90s than into the 80s when Afa and Sika were active. What was it like for you breaking into the business, having such a deep root in those, we'll just call them those old school ways?
Um, when I broke in, like when I first started actually wrestling matches, was around the time that Ring of Honor was taking off, and wrestling was in the middle of this transition, right? And this is so it's awkward. We're about the same age. What year were you born?
85.
85. I was
Yeah.
born in 83. Okay. So I turned 18 the year that 9/11 happened, right? Like
Yeah.
I graduated from high school. I was prepared to be an adult in a world. Then this event happens, and that world that I was prepared for doesn't exist anymore. In wrestling, similar things were happening. A lot of the guys that broke in the early, mid, even late 90s were brought up under this very regimented old school mentality. And I got a chuckle now because I'm in locker rooms and you hear guys go, that guy's an old timer, he's an old schooler. And I'm looking at him like, fuck, he's not.
He's younger than I am.
Yeah, you wouldn't be able to get away with half this shit back then. But you know what? The world's changed. Anyway, you would, and even back then, you got guys like, oh, you guys are soft. It's like every generation's got to shit talk the next one. Um, but yeah, we went through this like massive change in the way that shows were presented, distributed, booked. Wrestling got a lot smarter. Kayfabe got a lot less. It was just a lot less. Like the secrets were out. The world was different. We were at the tail end of the whole Attitude Era. Like indie wrestling's at its big boom. You've got super card booking going on with these young guys that are independent from all around the world. So literally was living through this transitionary period, and it was hard, to be quite honest. You've got this education from people you trust telling you that these are the way things are, and then you're watching as those things are being dismantled. And again, it's not saying right, wrong, or indifferent. It's just the times were changing.
You're absolutely
And
right.
yeah,
Wrestling, it's even from a fan's perspective, from where I sit, it's evolved so much. And even the little bit of the curtain that you guys have let pull back for me by doing these interviews and stuff, I know I've had guys tell me, they're like, Will, in 1980, you'd be out of a job, man. He was like, nobody did interviews like this in the 80s. They wouldn't have done it. Not a guy would have answered it. They would have made you look stupid by asking those questions. And I accept that. I say it every chance I get. I'm grateful for every day that I get to spend in this business because I'm a guest in it, man.
but
And I'm
let,
grateful
let me
for it.
let me tell you something that's a major change, even from that 20 years ago to now. It's just a whole world of difference. But let me tell you something that just it almost will make you laugh. I was really good friends with one of the guys who just won the cruiserweight belt at Alpha's promotion. And we drove around town. I had like a very early digital camera, like a point and click. Like they didn't even really have the SLRs coming out yet. Like they just consumer brand shit. And we took pictures of him pumping gas with the belt on, sitting in the movie theater with the belt over his shoulder, laying in his bed, cuddling the belt, shit that's just fun and entertaining. And we put him, he had an early.com, and we put him up on his website. And man, he got yelled at. He got in trouble for that shit. Oh, why you make the show about yourself? And it's like, now you have to make external content. You have to. If you're not making external content, you're not in the business. So, like, what you used to not be allowed to do is now the norm. And that's tough. That's tough for anyone who like came up. in the 90s, in the early aughts. It's hard to undo the programming, borderline brainwashing, really, um, to get yourself to the point where you can come to the modern day marketplace. And that's really what it comes down to. You have to adjust your mindset so that you can come to the modern marketplace. Would this type of wrestling work 20 years ago? Absolutely not. But you know what? It works now. You know how I know it works? It's making money. If it don't make dollars, it don't make sense. If it don't make sense, it ain't worth doing. And everything that's going on in the business right now is about making money. If you think what they're doing now is wrong, show them by making more money than they do. And
So
made it really easy for me to adjust.
So looking at it from that perspective, you've kind of talked. You mentioned 9/11 and the differences that it kind of made inside the country. From a professional wrestling perspective, when you look at something like COVID, though, you got to see professional wrestling beforehand, during COVID, and post COVID. You kind of saw it all. What were the differences like for you getting booked pre, during, and post COVID? Like, was there more bookings beforehand? Has it been harder to get bookings since everything's kind of opened back up the last few years? Like, can you kind of talk about what it's been like to get booked in, I guess the post COVID versus what it was like in pre COVID?
Well, about 2014, I got really tied up with work. I was with my job. Like I said, I'm turning 40. I had to buy a house, had to do some responsibility shit. So I kind of like drifted away from wrestling, but I always paid attention.
Life comes
Always
at you
did.
hard, man. I get
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Like I got a promotion at work that I couldn't turn down, and I had to ride it out, and I paid my house off, and now it's just like a never ending like fix up project. But I came back into wrestling during the pandemic.
Okay.
Um, I needed to get out. Well, I was working a marketing job in a different state while I owned a house in Pennsylvania, and I was burning out. I was burning out. I worked the first year through the pandemic, and then we were down to like 8 or 10 people left in the office, and I was like, hey, next set of cuts, I'll go. I just needed a break. I was so burnt out from the job that I took because I was burnt out from wrestling. So I got back into wrestling, and I've noticed a couple things. Post-pandemic wrestling, we really are as a community a lot cooler with studio shows than we used to be. You're seeing a lot of them now, and I love it. And I think it's good for a lot of reasons. One, there's the health management reason. You can do a small contained show, not have to travel halfway across the country to get exposed to God knows what virus, or what bacteria or what infection someone's got, so you can kind of like manage and control your reps, by staying at these smaller studio shows. Um,
Living in that bubble, so to speak, right?
yeah. And if like right now, I would both love and hate to be breaking in right now. I'd love to break in right now because you can do those studio matches. Like most indies you're going to work, most of the little crusty shindies that are floating around, you're going to have 12 to 20 people at, right? You can work your little studio matches in front of the locker room and have more people there than you do at those shows. And you can work with people you're actually training with. Why are we wasting our time, money, and effort going to work these little crust holes when we can just at any half decent training center, they should be able to run their studio matches, run full matches through, run 5 to 6 minute matches, 6 to 8 minute matches, get used to running TV time matches, and just run them the whole way through. Watch, take notes, run it again. You can easily get 300 reps a year doing that, as opposed to what trying to get booked on a Friday afternoon when in front of grandma and her 14 kids, and they're all related to the promoter, so nobody paid, and brother, I don't have a dollar for you. If you know you're not going to get paid, at least do it at home, at least do it closer to where you can be. So like that's one thing I noticed is it's for the benefit of the workers. You can get your reps without overexposing yourself too, without throwing yourself out there for too little. And then when someone does want to book you, like, hey, I have this following because I've got this digital platform and I'm reaching X amount of people. And now we've got quantifiable variables as far as followers and how page responses are. Like you can see the algorithm at work. Kid Bandit's been in this for a year and is running shows now. Like it's fantastic. It shows that the marketplace is shifting and we have to adjust to it. So um booking, I feel like I don't know if it's the pandemic that's made it I don't want to say easier to get booked, but easier to find the right fits. Because of the digital platform, I'll just say social media. Because of social media, now it's so much easier to find, clusters of people that are working on certain shows that you're a fit for, or going, hey, I really like these guys, but their product's not my cup of tea, or and it's also easy from a promoter standpoint to go, oh, hey, you're from 4 hours away. You want to come wrestle for me? What am I going to get into? Am I interested in this? Do you have any kind of draw? Like it's just, again, the marketplace has shifted, and we're just adjusting to it. And is it good? Yeah. Is it bad? Sure. Does it matter? No. It's the marketplace. It is what it is. Chase
Some
the money or die.
Sometimes people say different doesn't mean wrong. It's just kind of that old dog new tricks kind of mentality sometimes. Um,
I I had an old timer hit me up the other day. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you
no,
off.
go for it, man.
And we were in a locker room, and he made a comment, and I, put my arm around him. I was like, yeah, man, you can't talk to people like that anymore. He's been doing this for like a couple decades longer than me. He's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, you can't talk to people like this. So he calls me a couple days later, and and he's like, I'm really trying. He's like, I'm really trying to like get in this, he called it new school. He's like, I'm trying to get in this new school mindset. And I was like, you just have to keep trying, man. Just it's not easy, but it's doable. If you really love this, you'll find a way to keep up. And
One of the things you were talking about with the studio shows, when guys talk about timing in the ring, that could mean how the moves are used, timing of the moves, the series of the moves together, but it also literally can mean like the seconds in the ring for the match itself. Do you think being in these studio shows are giving guys an advantage when they're preparing to go on TV tapings and stuff now because they're so used to performing in front of a camera like this? Is it making them more prepared for TV tapings later in their career, I guess?
the smart ones,
The ones that are going,
smart
okay,
ones,
I need to remember how to fucking do this, right?
yeah. So if you remove the audience from the equation, which again, a lot of these smaller local indies don't really have much of a crowd, remove the crowd from the situation and just work the cameras. When you get to an opportunity where you can be on TV, or you're going to get scouted for TV, that gets noticed, that gets seen. That's important. Because when you have theater in the round, and you've got people on all four sides of you, and you're, hard cam is important, but it's less important because you're also trying to hit the crowd. Look for your camera people, look for your camera people, look for your camera people. The absolute 100 best place to learn about camera placement and working the cameras is getting to the sanctuary in Hazleton. That is what they specialize, is preparing people for TV. It's like a finishing school. You can learn everything in the basics there. It's the same town that I was trained in. My old trainer is the trainer there. Um, you can learn the basics there, but realistically, you want to go there when you already kind of know some things, and you can get polished up for television. That's important. Being able to call a match and work a match in 6 minutes is important. It's not important when you got a 6 to 8 minute match, getting all your shit in. Get enough of your shit in, but don't get all of it. You don't have to put everything in this match. So learning things like that, because when you learn how to work a match that's not WrestleMania main event every time, that's not sucking up 20 minutes of showtime, you're doing a service to the fans. Because the fans are burnt out after 2 hours tops. So if you got 8 matches out there and everyone's going out and blowing through 20 minutes, guess what? By the time we get to the main event, the crowd's dead, home, or don't care. So it's learning how to take the most out of your opportunity of where you're at on the card. And you learn that by learning how to manage your time. And then as far as learning timing in the ring, I will always say this to everybody, always. Train with music playing. There is rhythm. Put a metronome on. Tick, tock, tick, tock. If you and your opponent are on the same beat pattern, if you're on the same tempo, the same rhythm, it doesn't matter what you do, it'll look beautiful. But if you got two people, if you got one person, running on a 3/4 and the other one's running on a 2/2, or I'm not a music guy, I can barely play the radio. But if you got two different people on two different, rhythms, it's gonna look like donkey shit no matter what.
You nailed that though. That was pretty spot on.
So yeah, just tempo, rhythm. This is art, folks. It's art. Everything is art, and learn how to apply art to wrestling and wrestling to art, and you'll make art.
All right. So the next portion of your career, then, you've kind of decided to go down this road to start your own wrestling promotion for some reason. and I,
Self, yeah.
I jokingly say that because I've heard your comments in some other interviews and stuff about what's going on. So my question for you though is, after you've started your wrestling promotion, what was the biggest change for you mentally when you went from being a worker in the locker room to the guy holding the book?
So on the low key, like I've been holding the books at other promotions for a while, for various promotions for various time
Kind
periods.
of like Dusty did for JCP, right? Like he was the unofficial booker for years before he officially got it. One of those kinds of
Yeah,
things.
either being a part of a booking committee or, writing the rough draft before handing it off to boss man to sign off or reject it. So that part didn't change. You know what changed? It was my money now. That's what changed. I've done every aspect of running a show before, except for putting my money on the line. And doing Smash Master Wrestling is essentially just me finally betting on myself for the first time ever.
Sometimes you got to
Because
do
I've
it.
been doing the work. I've done the work. I enjoy doing the work, but I've never done it for me. So this one is for the birthday boy. It's for me.
One of my favorite questions is, and I said it before we went on air, is I'm kind of an old head territory guy. I love the differences that I've been able to see in the crowds. But do you see a difference in the crowds? In the different territories you've worked, both as a wrestler and as a promoter now? I guess what I'm saying is like, do you adjust and make the little fine tuned notes show to show? I've always said I liken this a lot to like when you see a band like Metallica. It's going to be phenomenal. They're going to put on a banger show no matter what. But if you see them 3 times on the same tour, you're probably going to get the same show every night. Versus somebody like the Grateful Dead, where you can see them 3 nights in a row and it'll be 3 very different shows. I guess what I'm saying is, when you're booking and promoting and you're running a show, do you kind of adjust it night to night based on the territory and the crowd, so you know kind of a rough idea of what they're expecting or what's gonna get them to pop?
So the majority of our events so far have been held at the Troop Civic Center. It's a beautiful community center. The great people, and they're 100% kid-friendly show.
Nice.
Um, this year we're going to be doing shows at Classics Bar and Grill. It's a bar, probably going to be a little less kid-friendly.
A little more in that
Um,
PG 13 PG range.
we may even just jump right to R for some things. Um, Bunch of blue collar borderline hillbillies living up in the big city of Scranton. We've been doing some things for years, and it's almost weird to see how much Scooby Doo we pull out for the kids, but it's fun. But yeah, absolutely. Even as a wrestler, as a performer, I'm scoping the crowd out. I'm scoping what is the vibe of this show. First and foremost, what's the vibe of this promotion? You're not gonna bring the same um you're not going to bring the same antics to Chikara that you do to H2O, like slightly different expectation of the crowd. So you want to take something because look, it's a marketplace. You got to take something to market you can sell, right? So I'm not going to go to a deathmatch marketplace and try to sell them, candy canes and lollipops. I'm not going to go to a kids show and bleed all over the place. It all depends on, how does the money get spent here? If you want the truth, everybody wants to talk about the business, but who wants to talk about making money? Um, you've got to adjust to what the marketplace demand is. I'm not big on, I don't even like the phrase comedy wrestling, right? Like the Scooby Doo bullshit. But my crowd is, so you know what they get? Scooby Doo bullshit. I love head dumps and face punches and stiff, rough, tough Tater City madmen type nonsense, and my crowd's into that. But man, They love Stan Styles and his whipped cream. You
Hmm.
know, they love abs and his totally not fake abdominal suit. They love that stuff. They love Tommy Vex and him feuding with an 8-year-old. So we run with it, you know. Go with the marketplace and follow your nose to the money trail.
I used to run restaurants. I always said tacos pay the bills. I had three restaurants, one of which was a barbecue place. Obviously, I don't run any restaurants now, so that tells you how cutthroat the restaurant industry is. But one of them was a taco place, just a high end, just kind of turn and burn Tex Mex restaurant. And I always said tacos pay the bill because that was the lowest price point restaurant of the three, but it turned over more people than anybody and turned out the most money. So I always said tacos pay the bills. I personally didn't like cooking tacos, but they fucking kept the lights on at my two other restaurants, so I made tacos. You know,
Sometimes you got to do the stuff you don't want to do so that you can afford to do the stuff you do want to do, you
bingo.
know? We had to do, or we got to do a horn, like one of the concept. I love concept stuff, you know, like I just love weird wordplay and shit. We did what I call a Hornado tag match. It was a four-corner tag team. Like I hate four-corner tag team matches. I think it's lazy booking, generally speaking, because it doesn't mean anything. We did a special, we were at the movie theater. We did no rules, tornado tag style. So all 8 people were legal. We were all over the place. Philly Mike jumped off the top of a U-Haul. There was an axe brought out. You know, obviously this wasn't at the community center. Like
This wasn't
Brad,
one of the children friendly shows.
yeah, this wasn't what I mean. This did have a Stan Styles kiddie pool cream pie, but you know, every once in a while you gotta do all the stuff that you know you don't want to do so that you can go do the crazy Hornado tag match, you know. Um, there's balance, but yeah, everything has a cost. Just figuring out what's worth it.
All right. So I've always heard the phrase styles make fights. Uh, like, I guess stylistically for you, like, what does that mean to you for you in the ring? Is it. I've heard a couple guys say it, so I'm trying to figure out more of a broad stroke in wrestling what that could possibly mean when they say styles make fights in the ring. What do you think that would mean in the ring from your perspective with your training and your working and everything out? What would styles make fights mean to you?
I'm not quite sure to the context of what they're getting at, but it makes me think of from a again from a booking aspect. I've got a roster of very incredibly talented individuals, and I believe in every person that I book in or that I book, or I wouldn't book them. You know, I don't put any match out there that I wouldn't want to pay to see. So that being said, I don't want to just grab two random people from the roster and smash them together. You know, I am very particular with matchups. There are certain people that I love having on my shows, but I can't put everybody on every show. So when I have them in, I want to make it worthwhile. Prince Ahmed, I don't know if you're familiar. If you're not, get familiar with him. He'll be on TV soon. Prince Ahmed is incredible. He's very Chris Canyon-esque in his originality, in his innovativeness. Um, he's also one of the nicest human beings on the planet. I love working with Ahmed. I can't bring him in for every show. I'd like to, but I just can't because there's only so many spots. So when I have him, I want him to work Philly Mike Swanson, or I want to have him work Lucky 13, or I want to have him work Mike Skyros. I want to put him in matches that are going to be able to showcase his ability with an opponent that's going to be able to keep up or maybe push him harder than just anybody else would, you know? And it's not to say that somebody else could handle Ahmed, but why waste him? You know, why waste the booking? I don't believe in wasted motion. I don't believe in wasted money. I don't believe in wasted bookings. I don't believe in wasted bumps. Um, there's a time and a space and a reason for everything. If we stayed true to that, I think wrestling as a whole would, you know, be a lot better quality controlled.
Well, we did it. I think we've done about all the damage we can do in one night, but there's one thing left. I always end all of these things with 5 random questions. I've got yours queued up. I've got them ready to go. You good?
I'm good. Let's do this.
All right, number one. Do you think a hot dog is a sandwich?
A hot dog is absolutely a sandwich. It is meat and it is bread.
Love the answer. Do you think pineapple goes on pizza?
Yes, it's delicious. I love it. It's one of my favorites.
Are there any conspiracy theories you think hold water?
You don't have enough time, but Denver International Airport, start there, start spiraling, go crazy.
The
It's worth it.
conspiracy theory iceberg, right? Like the deeper theory. Oh,
Well,
yeah.
I would much rather be doing podcasts about conspiracy theories than wrestling, and I love talking about wrestling.
What's your favorite movie, but two versions of it? Your guilty pleasure and your go to comedy.
My go-to comedy and my guilty pleasure. Go-to comedy is Hot Rod, easily. Danny McBride's work in Hot Rod is some of the finest cinematic masterpiece of all time. Totally not loved enough. Um, Guilty pleasure. That would imply guilt.
I always say it's that one movie you like, but you feel like you probably shouldn't like.
Man, I'd have to look through my Netflix. How about I just give you one that's probably surprising for most people because I don't even feel bad about liking it.
Yeah,
One of my favorite movies of all time is The Bridge to Terabithia.
solid
If you can get
pick.
to that movie and not cry at the end, fuck you.
You're just not human, right?
You're just not human. You have no soul.
All right, man. This is my favorite part of the episode. I don't have to say anything. I just tell you, just plug your stuff, put yourself over, tell everybody where to find you and what you got coming up.
You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Rosh Dangit, ROSHDANGIT. Or you can find Smash Master Wrestling, WRASSLIN. It's at Smash Master Wrestling for Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. And because Twitter's lame, it is Smashmaster 570.
All right. Well, I appreciate you stopping by and chatting about some wrestling, man. Taking the time out of your Wednesday evening and hanging out with me for a little bit.
Appreciate you having me. I enjoy it. Anytime you want to talk conspiracy theories, Star Wars, any of it, I'm your Huckleberry.
For for the Mastodon Uncle Masty, I am the Will Gray. Thanks for stopping by and listening, my people.